Hello?
It's me.
Oh, hey. What are you doing here?
You need to get in the car.
That's a funny looking car.
I know. Just get in, okay?
Why? Where are we going?
We can't stay here anymore.
What, in the 90s? What's wrong with the 90s?
We can't stay here, okay? We have to move on. It's time to go back.
Back? Back to where? The future?
No. We have to go back to the past. We're here.
Oh, I know where we are.
That's right.
80s, baby!
Hello and welcome to Plot Twisters.
This is a podcast where we take movies and twist the plot to see if we can make them better, and if not, more radioactive.
At the moment, we're talking about teen movies from the 80s.
On this episode, Back to the Future from 1985.
I'm Emma. Lou, give me a milk. Chocolate.
I'm Anders. Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan, and he told me that if I didn't take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain.
That's so funny because he said the same thing to me. So who's supposed to take Lorraine out? Is it you or me?
Well, hang on.
Wait a minute.
This is really awkward.
This Darth Vader guy, he's going around sending mixed messages to everyone. I don't understand.
Hey, Darth, did you ever ask what Lorraine wants? Because you're just going around telling people that they need to ask her to the dance, but in actual fact, you need to look within, okay? You need to look within.
Darth Vader really could have benefited from being told to look within a while ago. Hey, guess what?
What?
We're doing season 2!
It takes two, baby. Season 2.
That's the new theme
Take
song
two.
starting right now.
Yeah, season 2, man. I mean, wow,
Yeah.
here we are.
Here we are. We're back with a vengeance. Plot Twisters 2 Electric Boogaloo. We've switched decades. We're doing the 80s. And today, we're starting powerfully. We're coming in hot.
We're coming in real hot.
Because today, we're going to be talking about Back to the Future.
Emma, have you ever seen this movie? Hey, you ever seen this movie?
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
I've seen this movie
Yeah.
many times. I assume you haven't, so I guess I can explain to you what it's about. Or is
First
that
flippin' time.
first time
Nah,
ever?
I've seen this movie 100 times. Is that possible? Can one see a movie 100? I think I've seen it 100 times.
Probably. Yeah.
You know, carry the 2 divided by 3 times a year. Probably, yeah, a dozen.
Once a week.
10 to 100 times.
Yeah.
It's in my brain.
This movie is from 1985, and it's very kind of iconic for the era. If you don't know it, I assume you do, listener. You know it. Surely
Everybody
you
knows,
know it.
everybody knows Back to the Future.
Come on. If you don't know it, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah. If you don't know this movie, I like to think that our podcast is a place of inclusion and happiness and joy, and it's a bit like it's like a warm comforter of nostalgia that you put over your head, and inside there's a lovely warmth and a tone, soft tone voice saying everything's gonna be okay. But I'm gonna parse that and just move that aside for a second. You haven't seen this movie. What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Come on.
What's wrong with you? Something.
Clearly.
Something. Clearly. Is that judgy? Is that too judgy? Too raw? Too real?
I think
too
it's
hot?
enough. I think it's okay.
Yeah,
We've built enough.
all right.
We've built enough trust at this point. We've got 50 episodes under our belts.
Yep.
We've built up the rapport with these people who are listening.
So we can tell them that they're wrong.
So we can be mean. It's fine. A brief overview of the plot, which I'm gonna keep it brief because I'm assuming most of you have seen it. But let's just do it. Marty McFly. He lives in the 80s. Where does he live? Do you know where he lives? Where is it?
California. He lives
California.
in Hill Valley, California, which is a fictional place somewhere in California, I think.
Cool. His family are kind of in a bit of a bad way in lots of different ways. His parents don't seem very happy. His siblings are kind of have their own problems too. And we know from the start that this is a family that could do with some kind of change. Marty then meets his girlfriend, Jennifer. He goes to school and his head teacher kind of tells him off for being late to school and says, McFly's never come to anything. And, you know, in the whole history of McFly's, you've all been rubbish. And Marty McFly says, well, history's going to change. And little do we know how accurate that statement is.
That's good writing, right? History is going to change.
Yeah,
such a good line.
Literally, or figuratively, as the pedants will tell me to say instead. We find out that he's good friends with a guy called Doc Brown, Dr. Emmett Brown. Now, if you've ever seen a cartoon on Adult Swim known as Rick and Morty, you may recognize this duo.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
The same.
It's like
Are you joking?
I'm not joking.
Are you serious?
I never drew the parallel between Doc Brown.
He's literally called Morty.
And Rick. Oh, yeah. I guess.
That's what it's based on.
That's cool. I didn't even see. They're always learning, right?
Wow.
We're always
okay,
learning. We're always growing, you know.
I think the big inspiration for Rick and Morty is the very chaotic energy that Doc Brown brings to Marty McFly's life. He literally turns up and he's like, Marty, we gotta go. Ah, this is happening. Ah. And then Rick and Morty really takes that to like the 10th degree, which is that he's also drunk and like drooling outside his throat. He's like, Morty.
Oh, geez, Rick, I gotta go to school, man.
Oh, geez, Rick. Yeah. Wow. He has been working on some kind of project, and we eventually find out that this project is a time machine. But it's not just a time machine, it's a friggin' DeLorean, which is a very cool looking car. Not a very good car, but a cool my car expert friend said to say that it's basically just like it's a Renault Espace in a shell, a cool spacey shell.
They've rebadged it, is what you're saying. They've rebadged
it.
All right, yeah.
This time machine turns out to function, but unfortunately, in order to get the time machine working, Doc Brown has stolen. Well, he hasn't stolen plutonium. He's ended up with plutonium, which he's obtained by dodgy means, and the people who, you know, he stole it from or stole it with, come and start attacking him. And Marty ends up in the time machine, and he ends up going back in time 30 years. Where he meets his parents. He essentially realizes that not only does he have to get back to the future, he has to go.
He needs to go home.
Yeah, to the future.
Right.
Back to the
where he's from. Return to where he's from.
Yeah, said the name of the movie. And he also needs to kind of heal his parents' relationship because during his sort of arrival in this other time period, he also interrupted the chain of events that lead to his parents coming together. So he has to kind of try and fix their relationship without damaging the kind of correct timeline too much, without changing too much, but also get back to the future. He finds Doc Brown in the past, and they work together and to eventually get him back. But he also has a whole series of kind of slightly weird events with his parents, like his mum hitting on him and stuff.
Oh, she's into him.
Yeah.
Big time.
But after a series of conflicts and events and stuff, the movie things, it all works out. And when he does get back to the future, it turns out things are actually a bit better because instead of his mum falling for his dad because she felt sorry for him, she fell for him because he stood up for himself instead. And therefore their lives had turned out in a much more positive way. And the movie ends with Doc turning up again, and this time he says, we need to go in the time machine again and go to a different time because there's a problem with some of your family members. Exactly. That's the line, right?
Marty, we need to go into the time machine again because something needs to be done with some of your family members. That's what he said in the movie, and they put it in the trailer for the movie.
I'm not as familiar with it.
It was
you,
iconic.
So I'm glad that you've... Yeah, I'm glad you've confirmed that that's what it was.
He says, "What do we turn into?" Well, first at the end of the first movie, he says, "What do we turn into, real assholes or something?" And then he says, "No, you're fine. You and Jennifer are fine as your kids, Marty. We got to do something about your kids." But at the beginning of the second movie, he says, "Oh, what do we turn into, real jerks or something?" Right?
Oh, he changes it.
Yeah.
Oh, different timeline.
And also Jennifer is a different actor. It's Elizabeth Shue now.
Yeah.
right? Right. But other than that, it's the same and everything's fine.
It's the same. Yeah, there are 2 sequels, which I've seen one of. I think I've seen both of them.
Think you've seen both of them?
Hey, I bought the trilogy, so I'll watch the other 2. I promise.
Hey,
I barely remember. I saw them when I was quite young.
Let me say this: unpopular opinion. The third one's great.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of people think it gets
It's
a
in the
little bit
Wild
weird
West,
because it's
right?
on the Wild West and there's cowboys and stuff. It puts it all together, brings the whole story together. Without the third one, you don't have any closure, and without closure, well, you're just hanging out there open and flapping around in the breeze. You should watch the second one.
As I so often do. I will. In chronological order, you're saying I should watch them. Okay.
I would recommend that.
Great. So, Anders.
Yes.
I think if I was describing you to somebody else, at like in a very brief way to say who is this guy,
Right.
I'd say American beer. Back to the Future, probably.
It's weird when somebody reduces your entire life into 3 bullet points.
You can do it to me if you want. I'll feel terrible too, I'm sure.
British, art school, feminism.
Okay, I'm cool with that. Yeah, I was at film school, but it's fine.
It's the same. So it's all about perspective, right? At least I didn't say, or I could have said British puppetry.
Jeez. I thought we were shaking ourselves
electronic dance music Eurovision.
Yeah, now we're talking.
But yes,
But you love this film.
I love this film.
You love this film.
Spoiler alert! It's my favorite movie.
Yeah. What is your what do you remember the first time you saw it? Like, what's your kind of earliest memory of this film?
I have no idea when I first saw Back to the Future. That's an interesting question. I think I just remember it being it's part of the furniture. It's one of those things where I don't know where it came from. It was just always been here, right?
So you didn't see it when it came out?
Did I see this movie when I was 2? No, I didn't see this movie when I was 2.
This is me being shady.
No, I didn't see when
Bad.
I was a baby, but I definitely became aware of it pretty early on. I feel like I watched it before I was probably allowed to or supposed to, but it's defined. It was a building block of my life, I think.
One of the interesting things about us doing 80s movies, which I think, again, spoiler alert, I at least am certainly much more educated in than I am in the 90s movies, is that we won't have seen them when they came out, but we will have memories of seeing them, I think, when we were younger or whatever.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But it's a different experience because they're in the past, but they still matter in our timeline. It's interesting. What is it that you think that you like about this film so much? Why is it your favorite one, do you think?
When people ask the question, right, what's your favorite movie? And people give you that wishy-washy, I don't know, what genre? I like, if you're talking action, maybe I want to this, and I like Thor and Ragnarok, and I don't really, people ask me, what's your favorite movie? I go, without fail, without pause, I will say Back to the Future.
I think from a socializing well perspective, I think it is a really good thing to choose one and say what it is, because then you can have a conversation about it.
Just pick one already. You're not on trial here, right? This is not going to be on your tombstone. Just choose a movie, okay? And make sure it's a cool one, right? Because you want to look cool at a party. But people always say, what's your favorite movie? And I say, Back to the Future. And they go, oh, really? Which one? And I go, I don't understand the question, right? Because in my mind, it's one movie set into 3 parts, one movie. And I was saying that before movies could have parts, okay? That thing where people are like...
Yeah, part 1, part 2.
Right? Remember The Hobbit, which was the littlest book, but there's the most movie out of it, right? Yeah. I would say and so for me, it's because time travel. The only other thing I'll say, in the same conversation, I normally say, what do you mean? I don't understand, because it's one movie. And then I say, because Back to the Future has everything. Action, comedy, romance, interesting story, time travel, the cafe 80s, hoverboards. It's got it all, okay?
Yep.
It's got it all. That's why I like this movie, because it's got it all.
Do you know the phrase jump the shark?
Yes, I'm familiar.
I think that the success of this film, which I mean it's just very highly rated everywhere and everyone loves it pretty much.
People like
I think one of the big successes of it as a time travel movie is that it's on a very small scale. You are learning about a small town with a few characters in it. It's about Marty's life, his parents. I think the problem with a lot of sci-fi and time travel movies is that they do overdo it a little bit. And it's like, you need to see everything that's changed in this time. But we never really leave Marty's town.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, I don't know about the sequels. It's all based around this one very small area. And it's literally just, what if the timeline that led to my parents getting together was slightly different? And that's enough, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting because you're right. They never leave Hill Valley. I mean, even in the third one, when they go back in time, spoiler alert, it's Hill Valley, but like, you know, cowboy times Hill Valley. It is really small, but that's what makes it great, right?
And it feels very personal. So you feel very invested in Marty's storyline as a character. You feel invested in all the people that he knows. And then when little details crop up, you notice them, and that makes you go, oh, I remember that. I was there. Like, one of the things I really like is, and I can't remember his name, I'm sure you remember, but the guy who turns out to be Mayor, when he turns up in the cafe,
Mayor Goldie Wilson.
Marty says, "That's it."
Mayor,
and he says, like, "Oh, I
could
should be one."
Mayor, Mayor
Yeah.
Goldie Wilson, that guy.
It's such a good little moment because you go, "Oh yeah, that guy, I remember him," and also because they've kept this theme of there's somebody running for mayor. It stays in your head, and you don't need to you don't go, oh, who was that guy again? Oh, and it doesn't go over your head. It's a good little detail.
You are so right. And you know what's funny is there's a little snippet, little nerd fact. Did you know that at the end of Back to the Future, when he gets back to Hill Valley, and it's regular Hill Valley, 1985, and it's in the middle of the night, and there's that man sleeping on the bench under the newspapers, right?
Oh yeah.
And he goes, crazy drunk pedestrians or whatever, right? Crazy drunk drivers. And Marty says, "Oh, Red, you look amazing." And then he drives off. That's Red Thomas, the former mayor of Hill Valley, who was mayor in the 50s.
Damn. That's cool.
Tiny little fact for all you mayor heads out there. And
that's another fun thing about it is that 30 years is such a good time for a time jump. Because it's like enough time for things to have moved on quite substantially, but you also still know who everyone is.
Yeah, exactly. They're all still around. They're just a bit older. You said you sort of also were aware of this movie. What do you remember first seeing it? Were you a kid when you saw it?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, very vaguely. My mum is very into 80s movies because that was her sort of teenage years. So when I was growing up, I watched a lot of them because she would, say, you need to watch this. And this was definitely one of them. The bit that I remember most clearly, and for a long time it was actually the only bit of the movie I really remembered, and I didn't remember which film it was from, is the bit where Marty goes to George's bedroom in the middle of the night, and he's wearing the radioactive suit, and he puts the headphones on him and plays. Is it Van Halen he plays?
Van Halen, yeah.
And he plays it, and it looks like an alien invasion thing. That was the bit that I remember because I found it so funny. I found it so funny. I must have been like 10, 11, I think, watching it. And yeah, that bit really, really stuck out to me because it seemed so clever. And then, later on I went back and watched it again. I was like, great. But even more recently, whilst I was studying at film school, which is the thing I did last year, I actually I found ways to bring films that I like into my studies so that I could just watch them and enjoy them. Which is
Great.
not what you're supposed to do.
That's a trick.
So
nice.
this was, yeah. So this was one of the films I looked at, and I was specifically studying like beginnings of films, like the first sort of 10 minutes,
right,
and how they set up the rest of the film. I think this is such a good example of doing that because you have things like, that great line, history's going to change. But you also have the different members of the family, and you essentially see the problems that need to be resolved. And then when they are resolved, it's really satisfying, because it's like, I knew this needed to happen, and now I've seen it happen. And it also makes sense that Marty was the guy who did it. It makes sense that he was the one who fixed it because he was somebody who you see the teacher not believing in him, and he says, well, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, you are.
Yeah, he wasn't. The rest of the people around him, his family, were all in pretty tough situations, right? His mom is sad and she drinks a lot of booze, and his dad is, doesn't stand up for himself and lets bad Biff take over, make him do the thing that he was making him do since they were in high school. Write up my report and bring it over. I got to get it retyped because I don't want to get in trouble. His siblings are in a bad space. The brother works at an Arby's or whatever, and the sister wants to date boys but can't because her mom lied about her childhood. But Marty's just kind of like, hey, I'm fine. I wish I had a better truck. I wish I had a better truck to take Jennifer up to the lake, and I, wish my rock and roll band was pretty good, but I need to believe myself, but it'll be fine. Yeah.
Huey Lewis doesn't believe in my rock band.
They're just too darn loud. You're just too darn loud. Did you like that bit right at the beginning where they're showing all those clocks, and one of the clocks has a little cutout of Doc Brown hanging on the clock? Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's such a good shot. I love a continuous shot like that. It's very good.
Lovely little Easter egg there for the old for the keen-eyed viewers.
And so clever as well. Like, it seems really obvious to start with like clocks because it's about time, but this is very good. Do you have a favorite character?
Favorite character from this movie? Or favorite character of all time?
Well, both.
Favorite character of all time is, of course, Don Draper from Mad Men. Favorite
nice.
Favorite
Good
character.
choice.
Thanks. Cigarettes. Life is a carousel. I was at war, but I took another guy's name because I'm complicated. Favorite character in this movie? I mean, this is going to sound a little bit strange, but I've always really liked Biff Tannen. Right? And here's why. Because he's not a nice guy, right?
No.
But I don't know, I just sort of like the way that he changes over time. I also really like at the end, at the end of Back to the Future 1, when he's all like, oh, I waxed up your car, Marty, everything's great, And he's pretending to be all fine, everything's changed, and because that guy punched me at the fish on the sea dance, so I'm going to be a good guy now. But then right when he sees the DeLorean fly away, he goes, what the hell's going on? Right? And what is, he hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
He's more complicated than they're giving him credit, and I actually really like that.
He kind of seems, I guess, happier, but maybe he's just being submissive. I was like, he seems like he's better off.
Well, he is a bit submissive, and he is kind of better off. The thing is, if you follow Biff Tannen through all the different movies, especially number 2, what I like about him is you talk about the McFlys being a little bit sad in the original timeline and then being a little bit happier and healthier in the new timeline.
Yeah.
They didn't change. They changed a bit. Biff, depending on what happens, changes a whole lot, right? Yeah. He becomes effectively...
He's the butterfly effect.
He is the butterfly effect as a human.
Yeah.
He becomes that basically Trump monster in season 2. What have the present days done to my understanding of media?
TV stuff.
But he becomes this monster in the second movie, whereas Marty's kind of like the same dude throughout all of the movies. Same with Doc Brown. Let's be honest, he doesn't really he doesn't change that much until the third one. Spoiler alert: when he falls in love.
Can I give you a hot take?
Yeah, always.
And I kind of thought of this. Well, it's probably not that hot take, but
give me a mediocre, give me a lukewarm take.
Lukewarm. I thought of this as I was watching.
Tepid take.
Well, to be fair, I only watched the first half of the second one, to be honest with you. I kind of was thinking that Doc Brown is kind of like the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
You know how the whole thing about the White Rabbit is that he has like this, again, quite like chaotic energy.
Yeah, because he's late.
Yeah, and he kind of is like, I'm late, I need to go, blah, blah, blah. And then Alice is kind of like, oh, intriguing. I think Doc Brown is kind of similar in that he's really chaotic, and then Marty McFly is kind of like Alice.
The thing about being obsessed with a movie, right? Of any ilk or style or whatever, is that, at least in my experience, you just build up a ball of facts, like Santa's gift sack, that you have to carry. What's that?
You want to reel some off?
Well, maybe. And the thing is, you have to carry it, and it becomes heavier, and more cumbersome as you go, but also you feel compelled to share these gifts with people who don't care. Right? It's a bit like me and Simpsons quotes. The fastest way for me to alienate myself in a room is by doing the thing that I always do, which is quoting niche Simpsons quotes at any point, at any day.
You may alienate yourself completely from the whole room, but there will be one person in the room who looks at you and goes, huh, nice.
Yeah.
And isn't that worth it?
100%. And whilst the hit fail rate is a difficult stat, I will always rattle those quotes off. And so, I've loved Back to the Future for so long. I'm just filled with all of these facts that if anybody, feigns a little bit of interest, I will tell them all these things. Great news. This is our podcast.
No, you have a podcast where you can do it.
Welcome to my platform. I'm going to stand on a soapbox for the next few seconds. No, I want to tell you a couple things that I think are interesting about this movie.
Okay.
And I'm not going to do the obvious ones that people know. Like whatever. Everybody knows that Eric Stoltz was the first person to play Marty McFly. He did it for 5 weeks, and then they ended up having to reshoot everything when Michael J. Fox became available and cost him $5 million. Whatever, everybody knows that, right?
That's the level of wanted you want to be in your life, right? We will literally spend millions of dollars just to work around you and ditch some other guy.
He also, exactly. And Eric Stoltz was too meta, and he was too dark, and he wasn't very funny, and it wasn't the right vibe, right? So it was going to turn into like this weird sci-fi movie, which they didn't really want it to be. They wanted it to be like a funny, time travel movie. The writer of the movie was visiting his parents one time and digging through some old boxes and found an old high school yearbook of his dad's and was looking at it, and he said, wouldn't it be weird if I went back in time and I got to hang out with my 17-year-old dad? That's how he decided to write the movie. Isn't that fun?
That's so cool.
Right. Did you know that, I've already shared a couple of them that Jennifer changes a couple times. Oh, did you know that they were going to make more Back to the Future movies, but they couldn't because the set burnt down?
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa. I mean, that's probably a good thing based on my knowledge of sequels that go on for too long.
Yeah.
Keep them short. Keep it
short.
Sparse. Trilogy's fine.
Did you know that the second movie they were going to go to the 1960s, but they had to change everything because Crispin Glover there was some sort of conflict with Crispin Glover who played the dad, and so they had to change the script completely, and then when
so he couldn't be in the second one.
Yeah.
So they had to rewrite it so that he wasn't in it.
They had to rewrite it so he wasn't in it. That's why they went to the future. However, people think George McFly was in the second movie, but he wasn't. It was a different actor playing him, but he was upside down because he put his back out. Remember that?
Okay. That's probably a good idea because if you have access to a time machine, you probably wouldn't go back twice. You would go
forward
back and then you'd go forward.
That's what I'd do.
And then you would do it.
Then you go really far back and then really far forward.
Well, I don't know if I'd go really far forward. I'd be like,
what's the worst thing that could happen?
The world will probably be burning and dying.
Well,
it'll be horrendous.
The DeLorean flies. So you fly right over the badness and you go right back to your own time.
But this is also why they made Rick and Morty so that they can do all, and Doctor Who and stuff.
Yeah,
it's different. It's different. Yeah,
the only other thing I'm going to say is not a fact, okay?
Uh-huh.
But it's something that has bothered me about these movies forever. These movies that I love so much.
Oh.
Okay. So bear with me, and I'll be brief but also detailed, right?
Okay.
Just what everybody wants to hear.
A wonderful combination.
Right. There are a lot of plot holes that one could pick apart in this thing, okay? But there's two that I just feel uncomfortable. One is about the whole trilogy, and one is about the movie that we just watched, which is Back to the Future 1, okay?
Okay.
The one about Back to the Future 1 is this. When Marty comes back to the future and he wakes up and The Power of Love is playing in the background on his radio, and he realizes that everything's fine and that his family are better, and his mom and dad are happier, and they play tennis in the morning before they have brunch with their grown-up children who work in offices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why
does the son live at home?
Well, A, why do they live at home? Successful children, right? Yeah. B, why do they live in the same house? which,
Yeah, well, I
which
live
we
in
know
the
is
same
kind of like a rough neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Hilldale. And also, their lives changed completely. Okay, so think about George and Lorraine get married. They got kids.
Yeah.
They have a whole life. 30 years have passed. And here's Marty McFly. He wakes up. The whole world around him has changed, but he's wearing the same clothes.
Uh-huh.
And theoretically, he doesn't remember all of his memories as a child. None of them
Different.
happened. Right? These new memories of a new Marty, he doesn't have.
I do feel like that is kind of a gimme in the sense that you need the dramatic moment of him waking up and realizing that things are different. It can't happen when he's going into the house and going to sleep.
Right.
Because that's not the right moment for it to happen, you know?
No.
So if the house was different, if they'd moved... I mean, when I was watching it, I was wondering if I had forgotten that he goes into the house and he wakes up and he's in somebody else's house.
Right.
Because it feels like that would make more sense. That
sense.
he'd wake up there and be like, "Wait, this is Biff's house or something."
Right. This is my house.
And then he has to say, "Where do my parents live?" And Biff's like, "What are you talking about? They live across the street." And then he looks over and there's this huge house.
It's giant mansion, the McFly mansion.
The McMansion.
It's a McMansion.
Yeah, but it supposes, like I said, it needs to do that in terms of just the story beats, I guess. But you are right, it doesn't quite work.
It doesn't quite work. And then the other thing, and sorry all the the continuity heads out there, but in the third movie, at the end of the second movie, the DeLorean gets struck by lightning and goes back to 1885. Okay. The oldest living Doc Brown, present day Doc Brown, gets blasted back to the 1880s. Okay. 1985, Marty McFly, he goes back to 1955, and he encounters young Doc Brown. And he says to young Doc Brown, "You got blasted into the past to 1885. In your future, right? You're the young version. This is what's going to happen to you in the future." Okay? And he doesn't stop that from happening. Okay? And then, but that's not even the worst part. Then they go to the museum and they look at old newspapers and they find out that like 3 weeks after he gets there, he gets shot in the head and murdered by Buford Mad Dog Tannen over a dispute of $50, right? Spoiler alert, sorry. But wouldn't old Doc Brown in the 1880s know that because the younger version of himself read a newspaper wherein he learned how he died?
Again, that's the tricky thing, isn't it, about time travel stuff, is like a lot of time travel movies go to really long lengths. Go to extreme lengths.
Long lengths.
They go to extreme lengths to set the rules of the world, because the thing is like with this one, it's clear that if you change the past, then the future changes, but you don't change. But some things change, but not a huge amount of things. But then if he tells Doc Brown, did he always have that letter on him? If you watch the first scene of the first film, does Doc Brown have that letter then because it's already happened, or does it actually? Do you know what I mean?
The letter that says you should wear you should wear a bulletproof vest because the Libyans are going to shoot you. Yeah,
and then it's like, so are there two timelines? And then it's like an alternate reality thing. Have you seen Loki, the TV series?
Yes. There's so many. There's so many places that Owen Wilson works.
It's like one of my favorite time travel things at the moment, I guess. But it's like there's like the ultimate. They explain that there's the ultimate timeline, and then there's other ones that branch off.
Sure.
So, is this the same, or is there one timeline, or is it corrected? Is it edited? It's very confusing.
I believe Back to the Future has already set that precedence that there are multiple timelines, because we know in the second movie they have the alternate 1985 that they're in, which tells me you do something and then you can change time. It doesn't matter. It just, I watch it and I think what could be, what would have been, and ultimately I get worried about where we've been and where we're going. And I say that because I'm thinking about my life, but in actual fact, I think Marty and Doc Brown are the sort of, you know, facsimile by which, or you know, the old proxy by which we can live our own lives. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but it makes a lot of sense to me, and quite frankly, I think that means something, you know?
Well, that explains that.
Doesn't it?
It does. It completely explains it. I probably need to watch all three. I mean, I definitely need to watch all three. Very quickly, can I also do my thing and reel off some problematic.
Tell me the problematic things.
This is what's going to be so interesting as we voyage into the 1980s, because it was a different time.
It was a different time. It was a different time. Everything was fine back then.
And also, I think that Ronald Reagan,
the actor,
and I think that some of the things in these films, it's almost like, is it a thing that's problematic? Is it a thing that's like, you know, bad? Or is it just, it was a different time and it's something that wouldn't be depicted now, but was then, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, like, I suppose the key thing for me is the portrayal of Lorraine, and in fact, I guess Jennifer as well, which is that they both fit into a lot of stereotypes of female characters, and particularly Lorraine. But then it's like, she was a woman in the 50s, so maybe,
right?
But you know, she's quite like horny, and
she's super horny for Marty,
boy focused,
yeah,
and also just quite passive. But then it's like, that is also her behavior, because maybe that's what people in the 1950s would behave like. So I guess it's almost like, again, I'll have to watch the other two and know what they're like. But I wish she was a little bit more active, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's all I will say.
Yeah, yeah.
And same with Jennifer. I wish she was a bit more, you know, she made decisions that affect the plot a bit more. But then again, that's kind of the whole thing, is that they're not really in control. They're just doing what they're doing.
They're just there to be the girlfriends of the people in the movie, and the people is Marty.
Yeah.
A bit of a weird Oedipus, you know, mom thing going on.
Yeah, that weirdly I don't really have a problem with, because I think it's like, it's just silly. It's just funny, you know.
I just remembered one weird thing, okay, which is this.
Yeah.
People say this a lot, but like, hey guys, you remember that guy that was at high school for a brief moment that got you together, played lead guitar and sang Johnny Be Good at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, and also punched Biff, right? No, didn't punch Biff, but like, you know, parked
with
you, right?
Do you not remember what he looks like?
Do you not remember what he looks like? Because he looks exactly like your son.
Yeah. I guess you could say like 30 years, you maybe would forget people's faces, but still.
They probably got pictures.
Yeah, true.
I'm confident that they would go, oh, also, they named him Marty after Marty. That's a nice name, right?
Also.
That would come up.
Yeah, that would come up. The bit where Marvin Berry says, hey, Chuck, you got to listen to the sound.
You know that new sound you're looking for? Listen to this.
Yeah. But like, the song exists in the original timeline too. So how did he? Yeah,
that's like the cat. That's like the chicken and the egg, right? Where did the song come from? It came from Marty, but he learned it from himself. It just sort of it's a wheel within a wheel, wheels within wheels, mirrors reflecting mirrors, right?
Absolutely.
That's spooky. That's right.
It's an Ouroboros.
It is the snake eating its own tail. Delicious, but terrifying.
Terrifying. And that's basically Back to the Future. Now, let's go back to twisting some plots.
Emma, what do you think about the decade known as the 1980s?
Love it. Great time.
Love it so much that you want to do a whole season of podcast about it?
Hell yeah, I do.
Wouldn't it be cool if other cool cats listened to what we have to say about movies from the 80s?
That would be very cool.
How can we get them to listen?
I guess we could ask them to share our podcast with their friends, because they might have a friend who loves this stuff.
Cool, Daddy-O. You're talking about Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Plot Twisters Pod?
Absolutely.
Bum 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 ba-da, ba-da-da, ba-da, ba-da, bum 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 ba-da.
It's time to do the unthinkable.
What's that?
This movie that you love. You've loved it for so long. It's your favorite movie.
Yes. Twisted?
We need to change it to something different.
Why? Why can't we just, for this one episode of Plot Twisters, can't we just be like, the twist is,
cool.
it's the same movie.
Yeah, fine. Cancelled. We're
The
cancelled.
end.
Our idea is cancelled. The concept for our podcast is cancelled. We're leaving it. It's the same.
No. What I was thinking is,
No?
instead of twisting it, we could like, you know that thing where you're like, this house needs to be completely redone, you know, total bulldoze and bash out that wall and this wall and put in a new bathroom. And then some other very clever designer comes in and goes, it's actually fine. Maybe repaint that wall green. But other than that,
Feature wall.
yeah, we're going to change the feature wall. But if you touch anything else, and I mean anything, that's a deal breaker. Right, that's what the designer has to say. So somewhere between total demolition and just paint one wall is what I'm thinking. Right?
Love it.
You love that?
I have one silly idea to start with,
All right.
which may not work, but it was just something I was thinking about. We don't even, you know what? We don't even need to actually go through explaining what it is because it's just self-explanatory. Which was in Back to the Future 2. They go to 2015,
Right.
but they will have like hoverboards and like self-tying shoes. And there's holograms everywhere. And
Yeah,
I was just thinking,
had those things in the 2015s. It was amazing.
well, I was thinking, what if it was actual 2015?
Oh, snap. We twist it, redo the movie, and they go into the future, and it's the actual future?
Maybe we could like cut out Michael J. Fox and just paste him in, but it's all shots of actual 2015. So, you know, like Brexit's about to happen and Trump is about to get elected and all this stuff. Never mind. No.
Well, you know what they say.
What were your ideas?
2015, it's the most memorable year of the last decade. That's the
You
one
remember
you
you remember when we were going through 2016 and everyone was like 2016 worst year ever because all these actors keep dying.
Yeah.
Remember that? And we were like, we were so
didn't
young,
know.
naive.
We didn't know. You know, we thought
Yeah.
it was pretty bad, but you know, it was very much an amuse-bouche to the main course, which was
Hindsight
present
is
day.
2020.
Right? All right. I
What are
love
your
it,
ideas?
but here's my hot take. Marty goes back in time, and then they miss the lightning bolt, and he has to live back there forever.
And it's a horror movie?
Well, I just think it's very dark, right? I don't think it's hard. I think it's still funny, but it's a dark comedy.
So things you would have to deal with in that situation, right? Number one, not giving away the fact that you're from the future.
Ever.
I assume.
Ever.
Because if you did and everyone knew and they were like, wow, time travel is possible, that would be pretty earth-shattering.
Definitely. And the ripple effect. He would have to live for the next 30 years knowing that anything he does that is outside of the norm would really change everything, right? And by the way, he turns into like a weird, like creepy guy who lives really close to his mom and dad and his soon to be little baby version of himself.
But then and then he's born and then he
Yeah. And are you ready for this? When he grows up, guess who Doc Brown is? It's Marty McFly, but he's wearing a wig. Because
it's all him. It's all just different versions of him.
It's a Tyler Durden situation, you know?
Damn. That's actually kind of cool.
And then it could be really edgy and really scary. And maybe like Doc Brown was a person, but then right after the event.
He invented like a face changing
Yeah.
machine.
That thing he puts
And
on
then he
his
found
head.
Marty McFly and he changed him to look like himself because he knew he was gonna die and he needed somebody to.
Because it's the original Face Off. Because maybe he had bone
It's the
disease
movie
or
Face
something. It's the movie
Bone
Face
disease.
Off, but it's also Back to the Future.
That's terrifying. He'd also have to like find a way to survive in the 1950s, which we know from Pleasantville is quite difficult because the world is different.
Oh yeah, super tough.
You know, like, would he have any talents to get a job or whatever? Yeah.
He's a musician. He can play guitar. He can play. He
He's a
joins
white
that
man. He's
band.
fine.
He'd be fine. He's a white guy in the 50s. He's fine.
Here's a weird thing that I think about with time travel movies.
Right.
You know how, like, if you go to a different country, you have to get vaccines because there are different diseases and stuff. And also there are vaccines that have been invented for things that were in the past. But
Right.
like at the same time, you know, it's like if you were to go back too far in the future, you would probably die instantly because your immune system was so badly equipped for all of the horrible things that are around that most people had natural immunity to because they're exposed to them all the time.
Not if you wear a mask.
Hashtag wear a mask. So like
I
I'm
get
just
you,
here
though.
thinking like, oh, he goes back in time 30 years and probably catches something nasty
Polio.
and
He
dies,
gets
or
polio.
brings something with him. If I were to go back in time now and bring the coronavirus to 1066 and just wipe the population out because they did not have the healthcare infrastructure to deal with it at the time.
So you
What
go
a
back in
great
time to
time
the
travel
Enchantment
movie.
Under the Sea dance, and you're having a great time because that band is swinging. But you've also brought with you just a hint of the old COVID, and it's not the original version. It's like the bad kind.
It's Delta Baby.
It's Delta, or even the new Moo, version. That's too topical. To forget we said anything. Everything's fine. It's 2021.
We broke our
everything's fine.
we broke our one rule, which we have broken many times before, which is don't talk about the event.
Don't talk about the event. Stay indoors. Remain indoors. I think that you're it's a good point though, because if you go too far into the future, you probably die because of future diseases, and if you go back in time, everyone will die because of your present diseases. That's why when we invent time travel, we'll also invent the travel.
Immunization.
I was gonna say the inflatable travel buddy, which is a like a human shaped orb. It's a bit like that. You know that thing?
Zorbing.
Yeah, it's like Zorbing, but it's more slim. So it's more of a European.
Slimline.
It's more of a European cut, So
Yeah.
you look a bit more like the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man, but you're inconspicuous in the AD times.
Because you're also invisible.
Because you're also invisible.
It's like a theme park. Sorry, I have a new thing to say, which is more important than whatever you were about to say. It's a This is the future. It's a theme. It's like a theme park, but it's like you pay to go in a bubble, and then you go back in time, but you're invisible. But it's like, ooh, isn't that interesting? It's like Westworld or something.
Yeah, but instead of computers, you really are time traveling. Do you know what? If in the future, and I know what you're going to say, time travel nerds out there, well, if time travel were invented, we would know because somebody would have traveled through time. Not if you're invisible!
Exactly.
And in the future, in this theme park, and it's called Time, it's called Time Park. Time Journeys? Thorpe Park Time Travel Edition. Six
Future
Flags
Park
Over.
Love Sounds by Justin Timberlake.
We're bringing you and Sexy back from the past.
Go and marvel at watching your grandma when she was 7 without her knowing.
Go say hi to your great-great-grandpa Joe in the before times at Futureland or past Universal Park, where you go and you pay future dollars, which is Bitcoin, by the way, to buy a one-way, return ticket, right? Or one-way, depends on what you're into, ticket to the past. And you go and you're in a seat like a roller coaster, okay? Strapped in.
Yeah.
You're on a track, so the theme park decides where you go. There is advertising, but it's future advertising that only you can see, and you get to see.
You have to put goggles on, and then you see them.
Yeah, they're in the goggles, and you get to see a little snippet of your past, or someone else's past, or your the world's past. Future park. It's not a bad idea. I mean, there's a few
Future
logistical
park.
things like time travel and also ticket sales, right? But pretty much.
Hey, if someone can make money off it, surely it has to eventually be a thing. What if what if time travel has been invented, but it's only possible to do it one way, and all the people that have done it one way, we've like written off as like
crazies.
Yeah,
no, that's a really good point, because it's a bit like, and you
can't control where you're going to go. So like there are loads of people who travel in time, but they all went back into like prehistoric times.
Right, so it didn't matter because they went, and the dinosaurs were like, shit, Steve, did you see that? Another time traveler. And then the other dinosaurs are like, who cares? Right?
What if, man?
Let me finish the joke. Who cares? I've got bigger problems, right? Because it's a T-Rex. I think you're onto something. Time travel, you and I, let's just align to something. Listeners, you can disagree if you want to disagree, but also, I have the microphone, okay? Time travel is real. It has happened. It is happening. But, human beings are a bit like Missouri, right? Which is, of course, the show me state. You got to show me for me to believe it. You know what I'm saying? And so we're all a bunch of time travel deniers because we've never met and corroborated a time traveler's story. But that doesn't mean they're not real.
It's funny because I was about to say this is quite close to becoming a time traveling conspiracy podcast. But before I said it, the next thing you said was time travel is real. So that kind of shows that I like how we're very much on the same.
We're on the same wavelength. Okay, if we wanted to turn this into a time traveling conspiracy podcast, okay, what would be the 3 main segments of each episode?
Us discussing what we would do at different points in our lives if we were to time travel back or forward.
We pick an era and we just riff on it.
Us discussing what we would want to, which periods of history we would want to go to if we could travel in time.
Right.
And us talking about different ways that time travel could exist, but like in a kind of movie kind of way. Like, oh, you could get in the bath and run a bath and put in a special bath bomb that would take you back in time.
That's a great idea. And the different color and ingredients dictate the different era. So just to be clear, right? The first segment is us talking about what we would do in different time eras. The second segment is us talking about what eras of time we'd want to go to. Totally different segment. And then the final segment is us talking about theoretical, good for screen and TV time machine apparatus, including but not limited to bathtubs with different bath bombs.
The fourth segment would be us discussing what else we like, how we're going to talk about our time travel podcast.
I love it.
The great thing about this is that we did say that we weren't going to twist Back to the Future, and we haven't. So we succeeded. And I think we should leave it because we're not going to do it.
No,
we said a few things we would maybe tweak, but it's fine. It doesn't need our nonsense.
Look, tighten up a couple of the plot holes. Okay, give me a little bit of just as a viewer, tell me why I'm wrong, okay, about wondering whether or not Marty would not remember his childhood, and then I'm fine. Maybe Lorraine and Jennifer could be a little bit stronger, but the 80s and the 50s were a difficult time. And you know what? We'll discover that over the next several films, whether or not it really was as bad as we think it was. But other than that, I think you're right. We've not twisted it because we tried to. But, a bit like the sword in the stone. We pulled and pulled, but it didn't come out. You know why? You can't twist this movie. It's not possible.
Nope. Can't be done. It's too good.
It gets too good.
And on that bombshell, Anders, I would love to know, on a scale of 1 to 5, Michael J. Fox sponsored, approved Pepsis.
All I want is a
what
Pepsi.
Would you? He's the product placement was strong. How many Pepsis would you give the movie Back to the Future?
5. It's a 5. This is a 5. But I love Back to the Future. It's a 5. 5 Pepsis. Chug them all down. I feel sick with joy and bubbles and fizziness. I give it a 5. What about you?
I'm also going to give it a 5. I was trying to build up some sort of suspense that we might, I might be like, ooh, do you know what? It's a 3.5. Yeah. And you'd be like, what? And I'd be like, oh my God, yeah. Because it turns out there was something in there which was actually really offensive and the whole thing is cancelled. But no, it's a 5. It's a great film. It's a great film.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, there's only one thing left for us to do.
Yeah.
And that's to make like a tree.
I knew you were going to say that.
And get out of here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Plot Twisters.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you have the time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye. Changing hearts to a little white dove. It's more than a feeling. That's the power of podcasts.